Hello and welcome. Today I will be looking at what it means to metagame and how it has become this living, breathing organism built by a community of gamers that are forever competing against each other. You may be asking, well, what does metagame mean? What makes a metagame? Metagame, as described by Richard Garfield, is a particular game played with the exact same rules which will mean different things to different people. And those differences are the metagame. A metagame is a combination of elements that players bring to the game, what the player takes away from the game, and what happens between and during games. The metagame depends on outside and personal elements that players bring to the games they play. I will be talking about metagames within the video game community using Blizzard's Hearthstone. So firstly, how was the metagame created? The metagame was born with the emergence of new media and the internet, with people now being able to watch pro gamers stream videos on YouTube and Twitch of strategies that the pro gamer is using. These players start using the pro gamer's strategy to win, and that creates the metagame. The viewers start to use the strategies of these pro gamers because they are considered the best at the time. Every strategy has a weakness, and as soon as a lot of players are using the same strategies, other players start creating strategies that can counter the now popular strategy. Then the full circle begins. Strategies start evolving because they are being used by a lot of players. The developers of the game start to become involved in the metagame because sometimes an overpowered strategy that the developers did not think of was found. When this happens, they make adjustments in terms of balancing the mechanics of the game. In an extreme case, they even change or remove a part of the gameplay to avoid any unbalanced strategies being used and ruining the game experience. I will explain how Manovich's principles of new media can be applied to metagame. Manovich describes how new media, or digitized media such as images, videos and games, operate and when something can be classed as new media. Manovich goes through 5 main principles that describe certain aspects of the new media concept. The new media theory is fashioned in such a way that each individual principle both builds and depends on each other, creating this never-ending cycle of dependent principles, which is exactly how the metagame works. The principles of new media shows that the cycle starts out with numerical representation of the medium using binary code to formulate the desired effect, which has a similar mathematical plan in the way that strategies in metagames are created. Numerical representation then leads into modularity, which is what it suggests, using a single item repeatedly, which is considered to be lighter on memory usage when it comes to video games. The next is automation, which utilizes the numerical coding and modularity structure to formulate the desired outcome. This principle can be observed in the metagame by the way that some strategies can automatically counter other strategies. Variability consists of multiple variations of a single piece or item. Transcoding is the process of transforming a file from one type to another. This can be seen throughout the metagame by the way that a strategy can evolve from an older strategy. In order to explain metagame deeper and clearly, I will talk about Hearthstone as an example to metagaming. I will focus on Hearthstone, which is an important part in the esports community. The metagame within Hearthstone is important to the game itself and dictates changes and evolution of the metagame. Hearthstone is a card game in which players can build their own decks composed of 30 cards. Every deck has its own strategy, strengths and weaknesses. When 2 players verse each other depending on which deck they are using, one player can have a disadvantage against the other. The win rate can sometimes be evaluated at about 10% against 90% of winning. Pro players stream and make videos in order to show their decks and strategies. This leads to a majority of players using these decks because they have seen how well it performs against other decks. The viewers will assume that the deck shown is one of the best decks to use. Then a lot of players start using the same deck, which then changes the metagame. When this change happens, others start finding ways to counter the current meta, and so on, creating the metagame circle. Sometimes players come across a combination of cards which work well together and becomes too strong and unbalanced. This forces the developers to change a card or multiple cards to restore the balance within the game. The principles of Manovich can be observed by the constant variations of decks within the game, as well as the developers creating variations of cards to improve and stabilize these cards. Metagame is basically the game beyond the game. It's a never-ending cycle of variations and constant changes. Not every game will be completely balanced, and there will always be something to change or adjust.